President Donald Trump has signed a flurry of executive orders as he begins his non-consecutive second term in office. His first full day in office focused mostly on domestic issues, such as diversity policies in the federal workforce, where he ordered all federal employees in diversity, equity, and inclusion roles be placed on paid leave. The others include tackling the definition of birthright citizenship in America and declaring illegal immigration at the U.S. border a national emergency. The Trump administration has expanded the process to swiftly deport undocumented immigrants who cannot prove they have lived in the U.S. continuously for 2 years or more. Months before his inauguration, President Trump began declaring his intention to reassert U.S. control over the Panama Canal. The Panama has now filed a formal complaint with the UN regarding U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to take control of the Panama Canal. Panama's president, however, says his country has administered the canal responsibly for world trade, including for the U.S. Also on President Trump's first day back in the White House, he signed the executive order withdrawing the U.S. from the World Health Organization for the second time in less than 5 years, a move many scientists fear could roll back decades-long gains made in fighting diseases like AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis. Delivering one of his major speeches to global business and political leaders virtually at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, he maintained his America First stance. President Donald Trump speeds through his campaign promises and what he has already done to keep them in his first week in office. He also mentions getting out of the Paris Climate Agreement, suspending international aid, and freezing federal hiring, amongst others. Joining us now is Ambassador Usman Sarki. He is the former Deputy Permanent Representative of Nigeria to the United Nations, New York. Thank you so much and welcome to Diplomatic Channel, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Madam. It's a pleasure to join you this evening. Thank you.
Well, let me begin by asking you your thoughts on the major takeaways from U.S. President Donald Trump's inaugural speech on Monday, January 20.
Yes, thank you very much. I think, it's a presidential speech crafted in his own image, I should say, which is unapologetic, very assertive, centered and directed at his person, his opinions, and his objectives. It did not allow or give room for forgiveness, for instance, accommodation, or even understanding of the viewpoint of other parties, other constituencies in the United States and on the global arena. It was an assertion, an emphatic assertion of the Trumpian view of the world and of his country. And I think that is as it should be, because he has made his position very clear in 2016 and throughout his tenure, that he is centering his government, his administration on America, America first. And it's no surprise that his speech did not deviate from that philosophy, that dogma, very markedly. So the takeaways from the speech is, number one, immigration is top priority. And as we have seen by the flurry of executive orders that he has signed, immigration or stemming immigration actually from Latin America is a cause célèbre with him. Secondly, environment. The environment and climate change, he did not believe in that. And I think, the measure so far he has taken is to reverse America's position, both nationally and internationally, in terms of exploiting fossil fuels, opening up opportunities for diesel, gas, and other sources of energy and nuclear energy, and also really removing restrictions on the energy sector, according to him, to free up that sector. The other issue, of course, is what he called the weaponization of justice in America, which really translates into supposedly the witch hunting of himself and his supporters after the so-called insurrection of June 6, 2020. So it is a clear establishment of his priorities and unapologetic demonstration of his capacity to project his mind onto the American governance scene and also into the global situation, whereby, for instance, he says he would bring to an end the war between Russia and Ukraine, and also lifting of sanctions against militant settlers who are actually attacking innocent and unarmed Palestinians. So all these things indicate the trend of his administration.
Yeah,
As
Ambassador,
far as Nigeria is concerned,
hampering on your comments just right now on, the Russia-Ukraine war, he's urging Russia's President Vladimir Putin to make a deal, to come to the negotiating table. We've seen him ask of that, and he calls the war a ridiculous war. If Russia doesn't do this, he says it's going to face new tariffs and sanctions. Do you see Trump carrying out this threat? That's, if Russia doesn't come to the negotiating table?
well, whatever he will do, he has to take into consideration the global arena. That is the conjunction of forces between the allies, that is NATO, EU, and their allies, and the United States of America. Here, he doesn't have too much room for maneuver, especially going it alone to seek a settlement between Russia and Ukraine. He has to, perforce, carry on board partners like Great Britain, France, Germany, and other countries of the EU and the NATO alliance. And also the European Union government administration also has to be taken on board because they are stakeholders in the current confrontation between Ukraine and Russia. That said, I think he wants to leverage a special relationship that he wants to establish or that he had established previously with the Russian leader, Mr. Vladimir Putin, in order to prevail on him to draw back, to pull back, and seek some sort of peaceful resolution of the conflict with Ukraine. Mind you, he is very concerned about the introduction of so-called foreign forces into the arena, into the theater of war, particularly North Korean troops, thousands of them fighting on the side of Russia. When this conflict escalates, as people fear it will, into non really, what do we call it, conventional weapons, then we are now looking at the option of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction. North Korea's arsenal may be called to serve Russia's interests or Russia's side on that war. And I think the Americans and Europeans cannot afford that. So these are very critical geopolitical and strategic considerations going on in the termination of the war in Ukraine.
Ambassador, let's talk about relationship between the U.S. and the world at large. Well, for his inauguration, we saw President Trump break tradition by inviting world leaders from countries including China, Italy, and Argentina. But we could see that there were no African heads of state at that ceremony. No African head of state was invited. What does this mean, or what does this tell us? What does this mean concerning U.S. and Africa relations?
Well, this is indicative of the mindset and the personal relationships that he has established with other leaders. It is, I think, to my mind, an indication of the absence of personal rapport or relationship between himself and African leaders. And even if there are, or there were, they may not really feature so prominently to the point of inviting them to the inauguration that was held, his own inauguration. What really matters, or people who are observing the scene were really surprised at, was actually the invitation of any foreign leader. It is not the convention or the tradition in US for foreign leaders to be invited to presidential inauguration, but he did. And those he invited really politically are of his own ideology, of his own image, of his own type. I think it's just image making for the right-wing political leaders. We shouldn't be worried or concerned about it. I think Africa's importance should not be judged by the invitation of another country's leader outside Africa to certain functions. Whether they invite us or not, it shouldn't make any great difference in terms of our own estimation of ourselves.
All right then, thank you so much, Ambassador Usman Sarki, former Deputy Permanent Representative of Nigeria to the United Nations. Thank you for your thoughts on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure. Thank you.